have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you describe a little bit about the improvement districts? I don't think I've heard of that before, and can you maybe give an example?
So there's very few examples, and I'm looking to Annabelle because it's been many decades, I think, since we've had a new improvement district. But one example, I believe, is Hayhook area in Tucson Country Club. So it's when a geographic area has a very specific improvement, and they want to basically institute a tax, if you will, on that defined area that will help fund that improvement. So there's a couple of efforts that have to take place. You have to have good estimates in place in terms of what that improvement would be, but you have to have the consensus to essentially tax yourself more in that geographic area. So it's very rarely that you pass all the hurdles to enact something like that. And it's driven by the public. It's not something that we would institute, ask for, any of those things. Okay, so it wouldn't have to go through the Board of Supervisors? It does go through the board at some point, but it's not, I would say the finance department and transportation facilitate a public process. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can maybe elaborate on Hayhook Ranch a little bit. It's a very interesting example of use of an improvement district. This was a roadway out on the southwest side that had been used by a large group of residents in large lots, and they had been crossing what turned out to be a Tohono O'odham land, and for many years, many years. And finally, the nation said, we don't want you crossing our land this way. And so they were going to be landlocked if something wasn't done. The neighbors got together, formed an improvement district, rerouted the road around the nation's land, and have been paying off. I don't know if it's paid off yet, but that happened 20 years ago probably. So good example of how they use it. In other cases, I know there's been private subdivisions that have been wanted to be brought into the county maintenance system, and the typical requirement is bring them up to county standards, and we might think about it. And some neighborhoods have thought about forming such districts, but I don't know that any actually were. So that's kind of another use possibility.
Thanks.
Other questions for Catherine? Thank you, Catherine. I thought this would help set the scene for what we're going to do, which is to look at funding options that we might potentially put out there for consideration. Tom?
Yeah, Chair, thanks.
Yes.
Hey, Catherine, got a question for you. It goes back to your first chart, primary property taxes and the overall funding. It is my understanding, and I'm looking at last year's budget, approved budget for Pima County, and it says basically the Transportation Department doesn't take any money from the general funds, probably for payroll. Is that a correct assumption?
Could you say the second? I didn't hear that last part of your question.
You don't get any funding from the general fund, and that's where the primary property taxes come in to fund your personnel. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we get a very...
Any specific reason why? Because most of the other county departments, even though they do have special revenue funds or streams of revenue coming in, they take both from the general fund and the special revenue funds, but transportation does not.
Historically, that is not how Pima County's Department of Transportation has been funded. So I don't know if there was ever a time, but in the 16 years I've been here, that is not how personnel and DOT has been funded. It's always funded through essentially our HURF or VLT, the funds that come directly to the department. We get a very, very small amount of general fund that covers our graffiti program, because that's not a HURF eligible expense, but that's in the neighborhood of $120,000 a year. And then we do, of course, get a lot of the pay-go, but that goes specifically to our road repair and preservation program.
right? So, it's just, looking at just, amount that Department of Transportation generates for payroll, and why that doesn't come out of the general fund is just kind of befuddling to me.
I
When
hear
most of the
you.
other departments within the county administration get probably payroll funding from the general fund.
It's a combination. I will say public works departments, there are many special revenue and or enterprise funded departments, and
Right.
those do not necessarily do not get general fund support for
Right.
personnel.
Like, wastewater reclamation,
Flood
flood
control,
control.
yeah.
perhaps separate property tax lien, the library does. But, they get, there's an item on your property tax bill that covers that. And we don't have that for transportation. So have we ever considered going back to the Board of Supervisors to say, let's get our personnel costs covered by the general fund, and then that just gives more money to road repair, maintenance and operations.
I think that's a good suggestion, that if this committee wanted to make it, I mean, it's a conversation when we do our budget quite frequently, but this is the policy essentially that the department is funded through our special revenue sources of HURF and VLT. So we have not been, that has not changed based on our requests.
Okay, I think what Tom is saying, and this is another option maybe we should be looking at if we're going to be talking to board members.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that we can add that to our list. It puts the staff on the spot a little bit, and we don't want to do that. So, but I'm sure they would get.
I realize it's kind of late in the game to ask for this fiscal year, or this budget that we're putting together, the county's putting together right now, because it has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors before the end of June. So I know the budget process is already taking place, but this may be something that we can look at starting next year, is just to get a little bit more money into actually fixing roads.
Tom, we'll add that to our options list, which transitions into the next topic, actually. So thank you, Director Skinner. Appreciate it very much.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a
Oh,
question?
sure, go ahead.
First of all, Director Skinner, this is John Winchester, I apologize. What is I don't have the budget in front of me, what is the fiscal year budget currently for staff for transportation?
So great question, John. I also don't have the budget right in front of me. There's a lot of numbers in the budget. Typically at our April meeting, we give a presentation on our proposed budget for the department. So I think that it would be best if maybe I can defer that question to that presentation at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. At the same meeting, is it possible for us, my understanding is that the county can't use general fund revenues for transportation operations because the service is only in unincorporated areas, whereas the property tax comes from all jurisdictions. Is it possible for you to confirm that? Either, if you can't now, that's fine, in the next meeting? And if so, I'd like to know if other counties are using general fund revenues to pay for staff, because I agree, if that's a precedent that other counties in Arizona are using, that should absolutely be something that we're looking at. But I would like to know that as well.
I think those are great questions for us to research for you. I know Deputy Director Lauren Ortega was at the Association of County Engineers conference a month or so ago, within the last month, and that was a topic that I'd asked her to talk to all of our counterparts about, because it is important information for us to know. So I encourage you all, if you send questions like this that I do think bear a need for us to do a little bit more research before we report to you on it, send them to Chair Verberg, send them to myself or Annabelle, so that we can compile those, because I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation about revenue sources in the upcoming years, and these are great questions to help build that.
Okay, but getting to Tom and John's point, we will add as much information as we have available and the dollars to fund staff as a part of the budget presentation next month, which Director Skinner will have on the budget. She had suggested we go over. It's the appropriate timing for it. Any other questions? If not, we're still going to transition to the next topic. And the next topic gets right to where the committee was coming from. And I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at this draft paper on electronic and hybrid car fees. Basically, the purpose of this paper, first off, it was one of the options we put on the list. I think Lucretia and Tom Berezny suggested this topic. So this paper's actually been fleshed out to answer the question. So if you read it, you would find the answer at the end. The purpose of this paper, though, not just because it's one of the options, is to develop a format so as we flesh out each of the options we're interested in, we have common information across them. So there are actually 5 topics in this paper that I draw to your attention. First off, a description of what the potential funding option is. Jurisdictions using that revenue source is the second topic. The third topic is revenue generated. In other words, how much can we get from this for the county? And then what's going on with the state of Arizona. And so those are the 5, oh, excuse me, I missed one. Allocation of revenue from that particular source. Where does it go to? So those are the 5 topics that are in this draft. So I will open it up for any suggested additional topics that should be in option papers that this committee considers. And I hope you had a chance to look at this. It was a part of the attachment to the agenda. So any suggestions for additional topics? Yes.
Well, Chair Berber.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so what prompted me to ask about this? From 2014 to 2018, my wife and I lived in Michigan, and she has a hybrid vehicle. So we were being assessed a separate hybrid tax, I guess you call it, on our vehicle registration of $125 a year. So with the advent of electric vehicles, more hybrid vehicles, just wanted to, kind of get an idea. I mean, this is just, I guess, general knowledge for everybody of how other states or how the state of Arizona is doing it, because her funding will go down as long as when we decrease our sale of gasoline over the decades or years or decades coming forward, meaning less money into road repair. And then the second thing is, and this is kind of anecdotal, I was having a conversation around Christmas time with my nephew who lives in Gilbert. He has a hybrid vehicle, or he has an electric vehicle, and he's telling me that because these electric vehicles weigh so much more, there's probably, he says he goes through a set of tires every 3 to 4 months. And he has a Tesla. And so if these vehicles are heavier, then they will have a negative impact on our roads as far as the preservation of our roads goes, because they're going to get torn up a little bit quicker. So, these are the 2 reasons why, I kind of prompted this discussion here. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you, Tom, because that's relevant. The high torque on these vehicles, a lot of people don't realize. My son-in-law has one of those too, and he's gone through a couple of sets of tires. So a lot of heavy use on the road. But getting to your point, this paper does bring up the information on the revenue that the various states across the country. And I think there are like 37 states that assess some sort of fee on an annual basis, and that's in this paper. The bottom line in this paper, though, is, if you read it all, is basically the state of Arizona passed legislation that says we are going to collect, instead of just a periodic fee or an annual fee of $100, we're going to do the vehicle license tax the same as any other vehicle, which they've not been paying, by the way. So if you buy a vehicle, your first vehicle license tax, if I recall correctly in this paper, is 80%, or it's either 80 or 60% the first year of the value you paid. and then it's decreased 16.5% every year. So they're applying that now to electric and electric gas vehicles, starting in January this year. And the resources from that go into HURF. So what that means is a slight bump in HURF resources and our share from the county. So that will gradually go up because all these electric vehicles are now included in that source of revenue. So we have the answer here. Nonetheless, it's not going to be a new source of money given what the state did. But nonetheless, it's more money under HURF, which is a good thing. So we have the answer for this particular one. We need to move on to other options. So any additional topics beyond the 5 suggested in this paper? If not, we'll use these 5 to develop other papers for our funding options. That doesn't mean we can't add a topic. So as we go along here, if we find there's something missing in these 5 topics, we can add it. Okay? So with that, can I get a motion that we have approval of the topics as drafted for future papers?
I can do that, but I just had a question.
You have a question?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
is it, Catherine, this isn't, we're not the first group to discuss this around the table. So is there a way to get information from other jurisdictions on additional sources of funding for roads so that we're not just kind of pulling them out of the thin air for ourselves?
Yeah, we can definitely point you and provide you with some of those resources that have already been researched. I know at the state level, they use an economist, Jim Rounds, quite often for these transportation topics. So there are some white papers and reports that have been done in the last 5 years or so. So looking at a lot of this different funding for transportation. So we'll point you in the direction of that.
But I also mean like other states, like in
Sure.
Florida or, other places.
That's the research he does as
Yeah,
well.
okay.
So just how it would apply within the context of Arizona and our state statute requirements, if you will. But it is a national, but we'll pull that together and try to bring together some resources.
Okay, thank you. So then I move that we approve utilizing those 5 topics to explore additional sources of funding.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor of using the 5 topics as drafted for future papers, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
say nay. Okay, hearing none, we'll use that format going forward with the knowledge that we can add to the format if we want to. Okay, moving right along. RTA Next update. Director Skinner?
Good afternoon, everyone. Clearly, I signed up for too many agenda items this week. I have another update. Okay, RTA Next. So as always, another update on the RTA Next program, which, every month it used to be that we would do these updates and there was very little new information. But I can tell you that the committees have been talking a lot about these developments because we're getting very close to when we want to have that ballot together, that list of projects and categories. So since our last meeting of this body, I'm going to go over the different committees that have met and some of the discussion they've had. So ultimately, it is the RTA board that is going to make determinations and take action on the final ballot. So they did have a meeting just last week on the 23rd, and there was significant discussion on what this RTA Next program will look like. They did not take any action at that meeting in terms of saying that this is the final 37 list of projects or this is what the categories are, but they did take inaction, and that action was to direct the Technical Management Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee. Those 2 bodies should be provided the information and opportunity to discuss and make necessary recommendations to the RTA board on all RTA plan elements. So that means open conversation in terms of what those sub-elements will look like. That's when we're talking about transit or safety or environmental economic vitality or other categories. that they may want to discuss, as well as some details with the named roadway projects that have been outstanding questions, such as the funding breakdown for those projects. Will there be local funds contributed to those projects? So that was the action they took. I believe the next RTA board meeting is scheduled for May, at which time I anticipate that they will hopefully take some action, or it was probably planned for them to take some action on what this final list of projects may look like, because then there's a lot of public outreach and other efforts that need to happen prior to it going to the voters. The RTA Citizens Advisory Committee has met twice since our last meeting of this body on February 28th. Tom McGovern is the chair of that, and he's been working really hard with a very big group. It's 35 individuals, I believe 33 active members in that group. So it's a very large committee that is dedicating a significant amount of time to developing this program. At this point, the CAC has requested that they were requested to approve the original RTA 1 categorical elements of the plan, the safety, environmental, economic vitality, and transit elements, and those budgets. But the CAC asked for more information prior to taking action. So they have not taken any action in terms of saying this is what the final package will look at. The CAC has also requested to look at the RTA Next plan holistically, including the named projects and those subcategories, which is consistent with the motion that was taken by the RTA board last week. The Technical Management Committee has met once. They have not taken action on the project list. They have been on additional information as to funding contributions and also a holistic look at this package and how the funding breaks down. There was a draft sample RTA Next ballot that was released by RTA staff that we presented and discussed at our last meeting. It shows the 37 named projects, and this includes the 4 deferred projects from RTA 1 that would go into the RTA Next. I know that's been a question that's come up in this group before, is how are those funded? Does that take away from other roadway elements? So it's $230 million, though. There are updated cost estimating exercises going on now. But that would be set aside specifically for those projects. They're considered right now phase 1 projects. So the first period of RTA Next is when we would anticipate those going forward. And then on top of that is an additional 1.4 billion for the remaining named roadway projects. So I won't discuss those again. There's been no change since our last meeting in terms of what those projects look like. There is a cost estimating exercise in place that the same kind of approach will be used for all projects in the plan in terms of estimating that, which will have a very consistent look, because right now the estimates that have been provided, the county provides estimates on our projects, the city on theirs, Marana on theirs, and so this will kind of give the same yardstick used for all in terms of assumptions made in an estimating exercise. So that is the actions that have been taking place. There will continue to be significant discussions, primarily between Technical Management Committee and Citizens Advisory Committee, as they try to narrow down what this funding package may look like. Are there any questions on RTA Next?
I have a question, Chair. Can you just briefly talk about the methodology that at least the county is using for the estimates for the named projects to provide those? Like, are they given in today's dollars? Because, without, I guess, really knowing yet what the prioritization is and what period things fall in, what something costs in period 1 versus if it's in period 4 is not the same, right? So is it all given in today's dollars and then the total is extrapolated out for cost escalation, or what's kind of the methodology there?
Sure, that's a great question, and it's one that's come up repeatedly in these committees. So initially, we submitted our list of projects in May of 2020. We utilized a tool that was within the application where we entered the project. So it was a mapping tool, and it looked at what I would call some rules of thumb in terms of how you estimate, very high level estimating on projects, looking at number of lanes, looking at wash crossings, known environmental or cultural resource concerns, known right-of-way challenges you might have. So it was a very high level kind of rule of thumb using a tool that was provided for us with some minor areas. If it was an area we know will be a cleaner project, if you will, we might not use as big of a contingency. If it's an area we know that there's challenges, we had more of a contingency. So that was back in 2020. Of course, a lot has happened, as we've talked about, hence all of our discussions at the subcommittee level in terms of the cost of projects, inflation, cost escalation, fuel prices. And so last year we were asked to go back and look at all of our project estimates. And we generally just increased those by a percentage based on what we've seen in terms of cost escalation. So now that the exercise is happening with the consultant, they'll take a much closer look, less of the rules of thumb, more looking at very close to project specifics, and start to do estimating. They will be using today's dollars because that's what we have. And then those things we don't even know the phasing of the RTA next. So it would be impossible to look at cost to build those projects in year of delivery until we have that schedule. So it is based in today's dollars.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, Director Skinner, thank you for your multiple presentations today. Excellent job. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Take my water with me.
Okay, until the next phase, this is a call to the audience. And just to pause, first off, thank you for your patience. We had a lot to get through today, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. That's one of the important responsibilities of this committee, is to continue to consider input from the public. We can't always instantaneously fix everything, but we're trying hard. So I'll offer a small apology, or a big one if you want it. If I don't get your name right in the introductions, please accept my apology for that, but I'll try hard. Otherwise, correct me when you come to the speaker. We do have 6 speakers today. I assume some are going to be on video. We're going to start with Karen Noble. Is Karen with us, online or otherwise? Okay, if not, we'll go to Shelby Shear. Is Shelby still with us? I guess we wore some folks out. We didn't mean to. Okay.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was all very interesting to me. I work for the town of Marana, so I'm pretty familiar with all these budget conversations and everything going on right now, and that's one reason why I'm here. And I'm a representative for the Rancho Escondido community, which is actually located just to the west of the Moondance community, which I noticed on your slide for the fiscal year 23 projects looks like pending getting repaved. So I'm a little bit jealous of that community. I have friends that live right next door. They're going to be thrilled to have that neighborhood done because it's in a sad state. Rancho Escondido, the last time it was rated was a 39, and that was previous to, I believe, the most recent LIDAR that was done in December. I don't know what it's rated at now, but I just wanted to get on everyone's radar that Rancho Escondido community is in dire need of being repaved completely. It's a community that was built in 1995. I've only lived there for 3 years, and the roads have just gotten worse, in particular the last 2 summers. We do have a really strong, active family, walking dogs, babies, children running around. We have a little park in our neighborhood. And especially at Halloween, I twisted my ankle on our crappy roads in our neighborhood at Halloween. There's a lot of people that come to our neighborhood for the holidays. Halloween, we have kind of our goal as a neighborhood to be like a mini Winter Haven. We have a lot of neighbors that do extravaganzas with their yards, and we just feel like we need to get on your guys' attention and schedule, ideally for fiscal year 24. I live on the corner of Camino de Urania and Camino de la Arpa. Camino de la Arpa in particular is not in great shape because it's the road that cuts through the whole neighborhood. There's no homes that are addressed on it per se, but the park is there, the basketball court is there, and the West mailboxes are there. And we have pieces of concrete getting kicked up in our yard, or not concrete, asphalt kicked up in our yard all the time. I'm sure you guys hear this all the time. I totally get it. I work for the town of Marana, particularly. I understand you got to triage what's worse, and you got to, just do the best that you can. But I just figured you guys haven't heard from Representative Franco Escondido before, because our HOA in particular is just little old ladies that don't do a ton. So there's a group of us that are like getting together as a social group. We have our own Facebook group. We plan things together, and it was brought up like, we don't need the HOA to get your attention. Like, we need your attention on our neighborhood, whether it's me, whether it's the president of the board, it doesn't matter. We're all residents, and our roads are just not, they're really, really not great. And I know you guys have measurements of what's not really, really, really not great, but I think that we're on the cusp of that. And we are next door to Moondance. So you can kind of guess like what state Moondance's roads are in. We're in that bucket too. So that's kind of how I just wanted to get everyone's attention about Rancho Escondido. Thank you.
Okay, Shelby, thank you. And that's what we're here for, to hear what the issues are. And sometimes they need a little more focus. But the staff will put together a response and send it on to you. If you have any follow-on questions after that, certainly feel free to circle back. Anyway, appreciate your time and stepping forward and sharing with us. Let's go on.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Let's go on to Jan Shore. Is Jan still with us?
I am still with you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
great. Go ahead.
Okay, so I spoke last month about the dangers of Overton Road in its current condition. And I received an email back from this committee saying that Overton Road was not major enough to worry about. But it is for those of us whose lives are in danger on a daily basis. Overton Road does not meet standards of 2023, given all the new homes that Overton Road accesses as their only point of access out of the developments. So I can only surmise that you didn't really understand how dangerous this road is. It has no bike lanes. It has no left turn lane for cars entering their respective developments. It's the only way for cyclists to get to the Cañado del Oro bike trail. And it's beyond fathomable that you have a bike trail purposely there, and part of Tucson is so great because of this bike trail, but you can get killed in that half-mile stretch just getting to the bike trail. I'm nearly sideswiped every day on this single-lane road by speeding cars that won't slow down and know what they can't give you 3 feet of passing distance because there's no place for them to go. Although if you repaved the road and fix the infrastructure, there's plenty of side road. There's a gravel shoulder, although it has like a 3-foot drop off because it's in such disrepair. But if it was all restructured and repaved, it would 100% remedy this issue. Repaving would also allow the use of the middle lane that right now is not usable between east and west directions. There's a middle lane, and you can turn that into a left-hand turn only lane into the developments and into the church. So restructuring, repaving that road would really alleviate most of the safety concerns. And I really feel like this committee needs to read the latest literature on how road infrastructure changes make roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists. It impacts the traffic. And Kathleen talked so much about, how you look at roads. And I didn't hear her once say anything about restructuring the roads for cyclists and pedestrians, which now every city is trying to accommodate because there's been so many fatalities. So it really needs to get re-looked like I think with a different lens. And it's like 1 mile stretch of road that now it's just structural changes would make a huge difference. Right now is dangerous in my eyes. So
Yeah, thank you, Jan.
I urge you to take another look at this.
Thank you, Jan. We will take another look, and just to emphasize a little with you, I'm an avid biker too, so I understand what you're talking about. And with the infrastructure, one time, how we're working through worst case first. It's just how much we can get done at one time, how much money we have, and you may have heard some of the discussion about our constraints related to budget, but we have put a lot of money into it over the last few years and worked really hard at it. So we're not trying to overlook anybody. It's just how much we can get to with the dollars we have. So we'll take a second look and get back to you, and thank you for your time stepping forward again.
Thank you.
And for other speakers, please keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes because we do have a number of others to get through here. So we'll go next to Tanya Davidson. Is Tanya with us? Okay. Linda Robinson? Okay, Linda, come on forward to the podium.
Hi, I'm a longtime resident, first-time attendee, and I was supposed to have a covey of neighbors here with me who didn't make it. So we're just, it's about the road, and I believe our road may be on your docket for 2024. One of the neighbors called. I don't know our subdivision name, but we're just west on Manville and south of Manville. A pocket community of older homes that have been there. And when we call the county, it just happened this week because the potholes get so deep, it's like a landmine. And so then we start using sanders, and then the same thing happens there. So we call the county and they come out and do that, fill the holes, the potholes. I don't know how they select which ones to fill, but it's still very bad. And we just wanted to know where we were and if it could get moved up. And I've been there since 2002 and the road's never been paved. It's only been filled. And that's all.
That's good, thank you. Because my road has been there for 22 years and it has issues too.
Yeah.
And we're all facing this, but again, we're trying to get the worst first, and we're sliding through it as quickly as we can with the resources we have. So I'm sure we'll get a response to you, so you'll know if it's going to be in 24 or just how it's going to unfold.
Okay, and I left all my contact information, so thank you for your time. And I found this very informative. Where do you find out when your meetings are being held that are open to the public?
I'll let Annabelle deal with that.
Okay. Do you have my email address?
Annabelle, she's asking you how.
Oh.
Chair, thank you. Our meetings are here in this room or on WebEx. We meet the fourth Tuesday of the month. And on our website, I'll send you a follow-up email, but it's pima.gov/transportation. We have a tab for the advisory committee, and all the information and the background material is posted there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to Jerry. I think Jerry was here last month, so welcome, Jerry.
One thing about this meeting today goes along with that old saying, money talks. And I won't say the rest of it. But anyway, Golden Heritage Village was built in 1982. That means our roads are 42 years old. And they've been patched and filled and whatever, but they're still not in good shape. But I would like to thank the group, everyone involved, for making that list of communities in order of how they're going to be repaired. And if we stick to that list, which is public now, it will be graciously appreciated. Unfortunately, Golden Heritage Village is not on that list yet. But anyway, let's make Golden Heritage Village golden again, all right? Thank you.
It's a hard one to argue with. We'd like to all be golden. And I think you saw from the presentation before, we're making great progress, doing a lot of roads, Jason's presentation. So we're earnestly working at this. And
I have to thank you people for doing that, because now we know where we stand, and I hold you to it.
thank you, Jerry, for stepping forward and coming back. Appreciate it. Any other members in the audience that wish to comment or offer observations? If not, the next meeting will be April 25th. If you have any agenda items beyond what we're working on, like funding options, please forward them to Annabelle. If there are no other topics, seeing everybody seems to be very satisfied at this point, we're going to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion for adjournment?
I motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And Tom's seconding. Since you had a motion you didn't hear there, Tom, is that all right?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Want to stay here longer? No. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.